Hey NXTGEN, it's Christian here to update you on what we just talked about this last Tuesday at Lions Park, and if you weren't there, I hope to see you this next time. Basically, we were just talking about the start of a new 4-part series we're going to be doing called Breaking It Down, where we're going to be going in depth about how to better understand complicated, confusing verses or chapters when you run into them in the Bible. Because all of us run into sections that can be a little bit difficult to understand, and we don't want to just stop reading there just because we didn't understand it. The best thing to do when you're starting a new instrument, a new sport, or maybe studying for a class that's extra difficult for you, the simplest thing you can do is to break it down. Instead of looking at it as an entire whole, moving it into simpler steps that you can work through. If it's an instrument, maybe you're breaking it down to scales instead of starting right off with the most difficult piece ever done on that instrument. When you're reading through the Bible and running into confusing things there, you want to do the same thing. Instead of trying to look at the entire thing as a whole, sometimes it helps to break it down into smaller steps first, and then when you get them all figured out, group them together to get your entire message in understanding way. In John 1:14, it says that, "So the Word became flesh and made his home amongst us." And this is obviously referring to Jesus Christ, who God sent down to be a perfect representation of who he is. God is Jesus. Jesus was both fully God and fully man at the same time, and he came as a perfect representation for us of how the Bible lived out should look. So we know that the whole point of the Bible is to point us to God. That's why we have it. And if the perfect representation of God and a life lived out according to the Word is Jesus, then we can always just look to the way that Jesus lived his life here on earth as the perfect example of what the Bible is trying to show us. So anytime you run into a passage that you're finding a little bit confusing to understand, remember that it's always going to be pointing to Jesus. You can use Jesus to help you decipher through what it's trying to teach you in that section. So how does knowing this help you break down a section or a chapter or a verse into simpler steps that you can understand better? Well, you can use this to know that there's going to be a point towards Jesus in the scripture, and you can ask yourselves things like, what does this tell me about God? What does this tell me about myself? What does this tell me about how I should treat others? By looking at the way Jesus lived his life in the Bible. Will knowing this help you decipher every single deepest meaning of the Bible? Probably not, but it's a great place to start. You can go through reading your section that you're trying to break down verse by verse, asking yourself questions like, what does this tell me about God? What does this tell me about Jesus' life? What does this tell me about myself? What does this tell me about how I should treat others when looking at the life that Christ lived when he was here on earth, the example that he set for us that's exhumed throughout the Bible? When you look at the whole Bible, it can be intimidating to try to figure out where to start reading because it's so many books and so many words inside a giant Bible. Well, a great place to start, I always recommend, is John. John is an account of Jesus' life that he lived here on earth, and it gives a great reason of why he did what he did and who he was, and what his reason for dying on that cross was for us. But always remember, the whole point of the Bible is to point us to God, so look to Jesus. And I hope to see you next Tuesday.